You ever practice a part to death, but as soon as you see that little red record button, you freeze up and forget how to play it? Or you just finish tracking and you listen back and it doesn't quite sound as tight as it does on your favorite records? So today we're going to talk about techniques and best practices used in Pro Studios to get the best possible performances while tracking your demo. If you're new here, my name's Eric, and this is part of a video series where we produce original music from songwriting to publishing. Today we're going to talk all about the actual tracking in the recording process. I'm not really discussing like mic placement and different recording techniques. We're talking about how to make the most of the tools you have and put out a performance that's even outside of your current skill level. In order to do that, you need to change your mindset and get hyper focused on your source track, right? Like pretend that it's not going to be edited. It's not being sent out for mixing or mastering or anything like that. Like what you record is what people are going to hear, right? So you want to present the absolute tippy top best sound that you can muster with the tools you have. Starting from the top, you need to make sure that your instrument is actually up to the task. And this is honestly where I think a lot of people go like way off course, where they're so focused on amp settings, little tips and tricks they pick up. They forget about like the last time they changed their strings. Or has their guitar been set up recently? They haven't checked the intonation, things like that. That's one of the difference makers. Start from the top, fresh guitar strings, and a lot of them. Have a bunch of guitar strings on hand because you need to change them like every day. I've heard people online say you need to change strings like every take, and my God, that would add up. For the record, maybe like 1 or 2 packs of bass strings. Guitar strings last me like tracking one song. The other thing is making sure your guitar is properly intonated. So what that means is when you play this note, it's the same note on the 12th fret. If any of this stuff is out, take it to a music store and they'll set it up for you. The other one that's pretty neglected because a lot of people are like, oh, pick's a pick. You need to have a lot of picks on hand. One song's worth of picks for me. Even with heavy picks, once the edges aren't sharp, it does make a difference. It doesn't sound quite as good. So your instrument's set up, everything's ready to go. Now it comes to actually tracking. Make sure you're in tune before every take. That means having a tuner running as you're tracking stuff. The next thing is you want to eliminate as much noise as possible. No string buzz, no finger noise, no nothing. So a way to do that with the guitar is to mute the strings you're not using. So some guys will use painter's tape and like mute them down that way. You could use a cloth, that's what I prefer. So like, doop. Let's say you're doing a rhythm part with just power chords, you'd throw a cloth over your bottom 3 strings so that there's no incidental noise. It's not going to sound through the pickups. It's just pretty much dead. The other thing to do is definitely invest in some fret wraps or, throw a cloth above the nut, because there's a ton of noise and resonance that comes from up here. A lot of people will just kind of do the same thing they did with the scratch track, but better. They'll run the whole song and then, do a couple takes of that and comp something together. And that's okay. But I find the best way to go about things is to play each part individually, go part by part, do a few takes of that, and just really focus on playing absolutely flawlessly for maybe like 5 to 10 seconds at a time. Let's jump into Reaper to take a look. Okay, so we're looking at a session where I've finished tracking for one of the songs on the record. And we're going to take a look at how to get the best takes you can. So what I did was I brought the scratch track in and labeled the different sections of the song along the timeline. As you can see, A, B, and C right there. So you'll notice that there are different colors, and that just corresponds to different instances of a take of that session. So I'll show you what we do. So let's say I just want to start the song. Let's go with part A, highlight part A. Arm the track you are going to use, toggle your repeat on, make sure that it loops through this selection, and change your record mode to time selection auto punch. Every DAW will have its own version of that. What this does is it just ensures that the tracking only occurs during that selected part. And that's kind of cool later on because you can give yourself as much of a pre-roll as you want. But in this instance, see, it's going to start. And then it goes through part A, just like that. And I'll shorten this up actually. So the reason you toggle your repeat is so that it goes back to the beginning of that selected portion. And you can just focus on getting that part done perfectly. Okay. And then cycle through takes. You can comp something together and make it Make it excellent. Another pro tip while I've got you guys here is I used to think that the way to getting like big guitars was just a lot of really well done layers, but that's not the case. It's kind of counterintuitive. So just think of it like the more layers of guitar you stack on top of each other, the more competition there is for that initial like pick attack and transient. So it actually ends up softening the whole performance out. So I know it looks like I quad tracked the guitars here, right? But this rhythm left is actually the same signal as my 57 mono. So what I did is I took the guitar signal and split it between my interface with its like preamps and whatnot, and the actual guitar amp that I had that I'd mic'd. So this is the mic'd amp signal, and this is my DI into the computer. This is actually the same performance. So there's not, it sums out to being one like left track. So it's not actually another performance. I didn't actually quad track. This is just more for like tonal shaping kind of things. The way to get heavy, aggressive, or like, impactful sounding guitars is have everything hitting at the same time in tune. That's the best way to go. So the other advantage I found of tracking like that is you'll see I did some edits. I got to use that as a ruler on these other guys here, where it's impossible to see where the transient is in some instances, right? Because it's just this big fat worm. But if you have your DI signal, it's quite a bit easier to see where the pick lines up. So I made editing a breeze. There we go. Yeah, so man, this video took me a long time. Got tied up with doing a lot of tracking. I got like 5 songs done. Next thing's next. Looking forward to showing you guys some music. I'll see you in the next one.